All right, what's up, Giga Gamers? Welcome to the Strat Chat. Today we're going to be doing Patch Day. It's Meta Wednesday. We're looking at patch 13.14. It is time. Vacation is over at Riot. This is when they do their universal worldwide vacation. So now they're back at it, and we've got the patch notes here. We're also going to stay ahead of the meta. Make sure that you watch the video if you want to keep ahead of the entire meta game. If you want to see what's going to be hot next, we're going to be going over that. And at the very end, we're going to go over some Naafiri champion insights who will be released during this patch. We'll definitely be doing a breakdown of the champion and its abilities in as many games as possible when it does come out, but make sure that you check it out at the end. We'll be talking about it. All right. Here we go. We've got the patch highlights. As you can see, most of the standouts that have been doing fantastic are going to get hit. We've got Hecarim and Jax being universal nerfs that they just needed it across all levels. This is largely because people were finally figuring out the builds about them. Pro tier, we're hitting Emilio again, which absolutely needed to be done. And we're seeing some buffs, including some champions that I don't think needed it. So part of this list is going to be our top of our playable tier for 13-14. Also some system changes to the weapons. So let's check it out. First thing that we're going to be dealing with is the mid-season ranked reset. All right, basically there's a schedule for everyone as far as when day is going to start for competition. What I highly recommend is that you check out our last video on controlling your emotions and competing and performing under stress, because end of season and beginning of season is when people are most wigged out about competing. And if you can stay cool, calm, collected, you can wade your way through the rubbish, right? When people are just trying to, when they're too high strung and they're making ridiculous either statements or actions, you want to be that cool, steady figure that's going to keep everyone in the game, making sure that we're not fizzing out, burning out. We're going to have a couple ranked changes in Split 2. But you're going to see no more promotional series between divisions. The amount of placement games has been reduced from 10 to 5. This is to just get you on your roll faster. And they've also added Emerald tier, a new rank between Platinum and Diamond. This means that you're probably going to climb higher this season than you did last, just by default. And the same high percentage of people, or low percentage of people, will be at the highest tier of ELO. So basically, once you're at Diamond 2, you're at about the same rank that you were before. But expect yourself to climb a little bit faster this time around, because there's 4 more divisions to split everybody up into. This will lead for less stagnation in silver and gold. A lot of people were feeling frustrated that they couldn't get out of silver or gold, but largely that's because they just aren't playing that good. They just need to get a little bit better. It's usually them, it's not the system. So if you want to do it, just make sure you keep checking it out. You are going to climb. You're going to be higher. Prepare yourself. It's not actually meaningful unless you're playing better. So take pride in the process. The journey, the adventure of getting better is a lot of fun, right? It's a ton of fun to get better, to like see yourself, to try to do something to accomplish it. Highly recommend that you take that process and not define yourself based on the rank that you're at. Soul Fighter. Huge news. Probably the most anticipated release that we've ever seen in this game. Even bigger than Teamfight Tactics, because people didn't really know what to expect that much out of the auto battler. It ended up being a permanent game mode. Based on the hype and based on what people have done on the PvE, it seems like Soul Fighter probably will make it as well. It's going to be a 2v2v2v2 game, so you can pair up with your duos, and rather just then play ranked solo queue, you'll be able to jump into these games. We're going to have battlers. We're going to have a lot of different things going on. Naafiri we'll talk about at the end. Again, like we said, here we go. Big champions. Aatrox, Q damage increased, minion damage modifier increased, okay? This is going to make it easier to scale on Aatrox, and when you do get into the mid game, you're going to feel like more of a powerhouse. All right, they're talking about the different damage numbers. The actual raw value goes down slightly, so laning phase a little bit, tiny bit worse, but you will immediately feel that when you do get out of laning phase, and when you feel like you've jumped ahead in the lane, you will be able to carry your games on Aatrox. Diana, the shield strength is increased, damage per orb is increased, and the E damage is increased, okay? This is not a small amount of changes. 10% of a buff on the E. Remember that you're casting this twice in fights, so this is really like a 20, sometimes 30% if you do the trick. Shield strength on here is going up by a flat amount, 5 at all ranks, 5% AP as well. And the magic damage per orb, you can see, all right, another 3% AP, and this is happening for 3 orbs, and then you're getting it twice, so this is really times 6, so an 18% increase is a very large increase here as well. Diana is going to fly right to the top of the marks. Get Nashor's Tooth first, and then depending on the game flow, you can either go for assassin items or Jack Show to be able to jump into fights and stick to them. But Diana is going to be very, very good. W bonus armor and magic resist decreased. We called this at the very beginning when they did the mini rework on Hecarim. They gave way too high bonus values. If you remember, this was actually 25 on release. Now it's coming down to where it ought to be. 5 bonus resistances. This doesn't make you just an unstoppable juggernaut in the early game. You're going to have to put more ranks in to feel the effects. This will be a huge hit to Hecarim, and it was needed. It was just too good. I'm glad that they hit this. That ability was broken. I'm glad that they're taking it away. Jax, the E cooldown increased and the R mana cost increased, right? This is 1 second across the board. This will change a couple matchups as far as where the windows are going to be for attacking. Some of the champions that were more vulnerable to it, like a Gnar that might have to jump away, suddenly you're considering the time frame in between getting your jump cooldown versus them getting counter strike. You're buying yourself an extra second in those windows. That's going to be very impactful. And the mana cost of Grandmaster at Arms going up to 100, having to live life the way that everybody else does. This will cause some issues, especially since people have been playing this as if it's just been free. The whole mana kit, you very rarely run out of mana on Jax, unless you're being super, super aggressive in the laning phase. We might see parts where Presence of Mind becomes fairly mandatory in these Conqueror and Lethal Tempo builds. But you'll just have to be cognizant of this. It'll definitely give you a hiccup the first time that you see it. Karthus has been way too prominent in bottom lane, and it's starting to get picked up more. More and more people have realized that mages are just great. All right, Seraphine is still the best bottom laner, period, bar none. But Karthus has been seeing more and more play, especially with some of the nerfs to the peripherals to AD carries. It's meant that the mages are getting a little bit too strong right now, and Karthus was kind of #1 on that list, and since he was the most popular, he's the one with the most notoriety, all right? And since he's been getting played more, that's why he's getting hit. I don't think he necessarily deserved this, because largely it was one tricks that were playing him in bot lane, and they were driving the win rate up to about 55%, and that's okay. Right? If one tricks should be playing at about 56 to 60% on their champions, it's okay if this win rate floats up to 55 if it's mostly one tricks. The problem is that a lot of people started picking it up and it didn't really drop his win rate. So they're hitting it. They're taking, they're giving 5% extra damage to the monster damage modifier, our bonus damage, but they're reducing his early skittle damage by 2. All right, now when it's isolated, this is doubled, so that's 4. And based on the number of times that you're using this in lane, that's absolutely going to add up. And this will be a meaningful nerf. The one tricks are still going to feel fine. They're still going to feel super comfortable. The power in Karthus, you know, you have a fine laning phase. It's late game when you know when to die and when not to die. And that's what's going to make the good Karthus players separate themselves. This patch does nothing to stop that. The other bit, though, that is a little bit more meaningful is the mana on takedown is getting reduced by 5 across the board. This will impact your lane phase, as you're going to notice if you're hitting 6 creep every single time with Q, that's going to be 30 extra mana that you're missing out on from last hits alone, right? So when you're talking about killing these minions, that's an extra. If you're on 0 mana and you're just getting your mana back by last hitting and then coming back and getting Q, you're actually losing your access to this by an extra Q every single wave. So this will matter for those situations where you're getting low in mana. You get those prolonged sieges in the bot lane. Kindred, base health increased, base armor increased. Why are they buffing it, you ask? Q base damage decreased and cooldown increased. All right, so they're actually nerfing. What they did is they basically walking back the changes from last patch. This didn't have the intended nerf that they wanted, and so instead they are taking away from other places. Basically, this is normally what they do to most champions who have to fight fair. And they say, we're taking away some of your armor and some of your health, and therefore in pro play they will be able to exploit it. The problem is that Kindred gets to kite and she doesn't get hit in pro play. right? They basically take 0 damage unless they're getting hard engaged upon. And because you're taking 0 damage, you don't need to worry about these numbers unless you go into an all-in. But most of the fights are, I dive in, I poke, I keep you slow, I dash away. You don't hit me. So these weren't meaningful. What will be meaningful is an extra 1 second cooldown on the Q. Now this will be shortened, right? If you're within your wolf zone, and the physical damage is being reduced by 10, which is pretty significant. Okay. And then when you talk about the multipliers, the different targets, this actually starts to add up very quickly. So it is a fairly sizable nerf relative to where she was a month ago. It is going to be relatively even to where she is here for 95% of players. For the very best players, this will be a huge decrease in the amount of damage and invade potential that Kindred has. Lissandra. I don't know why they're doing this. Lissandra was in a very good spot. She's gotten multiple consecutive buffs patch to patch. And she's getting buffed again. And these ones are pretty big. All right, so we have some quality of life changes to the subjugation. All right. Thralls will now follow enemies into brush if they were already being chased. All right, so the thralls won't just randomly lose vision anymore. Thralls are revealed to enemies through Fog of War, so now they can see them. A little bit, I don't know. I guess you can put this in. I don't know why. I think they're just trying to make it fair. If they can see you, you can see them. I don't know really why they wanted to put this in. Thralls will stop at final frames before exploding, but now they will not. They will actually continue. All right, so they will continue until they explode. Think of this as a Cogmon passive. You run, and imagine if you just had to stop and then they walked away from you. So this is actually going to be fairly impactful. The fact that you can actually chase down into bushes means that these will deal way more. This makes Lissandra the paramount teamfight in pit mage, all right? And you compare this with someone like a Kennen or an Ornn to just get these blow-up team fights, thralls everywhere, you just get this massive team fight composition. You compare it with Seraphine from the bot lane to get big wombo combos. Or Renata Glask to just be the best team around the pit that you can be. In her lane, she's also getting some bonuses, all right? Ice Shard, slow application is now hitting everybody, okay? This is a big deal. And the Frozen Tomb healing amount, boom, getting popped up, extra 10 and 30% AP, all right? This is a large amount of change. This is hitting basically some of the more tanky builds where you're going for Aftershock and Rod of Ages, and you're not really building that much AP. Now you'll be a little bit more incentivized. I still see a world where you're basically going to build the same items. It's going to be a lot of Everfrost, a lot of Rod of Ages, some amount of Demonic Embrace, but largely just getting the burst out, having the Zonias, having extra life, still going to be the way to go. Damage and slow application cadence used to be 4 times per second. Now it's 16, all right? So that's going to be much more consistent. This is something that I wish that they would implement across the entire game, where damage would just tick, right? Like you'd just see it roll rather than tick, tick, tick. It's perhaps one of the most, yeah, it's like this occult thing that they put in the game. Like if you play Karthus, you know that when you activate E, you get the burst. And when you deactivate E, it still casts one more time, but you don't have to spend the mana. And so it's not visible at all that if you turn E on and off, you're actually dealing the same amount of damage, but spending less mana. So I don't like that they have that in the game. I'd rather see more changes go in this direction. Melio has been the best champion, still the best champion. We'll see if they hit him hard enough. The burn damage going from 2580 down to 1550. This is a significant change, right? Especially for laning. Those pokes, each one of them is going to hit for 10 less. That is a big deal for laning phase. Warm hugs, all right, this is the E. The bonus move speed is being shrunk by 3% down to 5%. This was perhaps the most difficult part of his kit to play around. The fact that your carry got to go in for hits, you get the extra range, you're hitting, you're dodging back. You get completely one-sided trades on Melio. And this is really the advantage that he gives was, we get to hit you, you don't get to hit us. We are shielded, move speed, and I have extra increase of range, meaning I can hit you, I dodge back, I hit you again if you come back, rinse, repeat, right? And this makes the trading patterns very awkward when playing against Melio. The counter will still be all in, right? You play against this guy, he puts spells on cooldown, he has very long cooldowns, so go ahead and engage against Melio. You won't be getting poked nearly as hard. from the burn damage, and the movement speed will be a little bit less drastic, so you'll see those windows a little bit better. Make sure to punish when his spells are on cooldown. Rek'Sai, Unburrow base damage decreased, E damage decreased. Like we said, she was still going to be good from last patch. They're moving it so that the Unburrow 5 damage being knocked off and the Furious Bite is going to completely change. But it's going to be changing from a lower base amount with a higher with a ratio based on your total AD rather than your bonus AD. So at early levels, when you have about 70 attack damage, like at level 1, all right, you're going to get an extra 50 damage here, which equates to the same number, all right? But as you go through the game, 70% of your total AD is not going to be scaling nearly as good as 85% of your bonus AD was doing. So we'll keep track of this. We'll see if this puts her in the gutter. There may be cases where she jumps ahead, and in parts of the game where you're actually pre-shop level 4 is kind of sticking out in my mind as a point of strength for Rek'Sai, where she can, after full clearing, for example, dive behind top laners and go for a fight. In that situation, you're going to get basically 90 damage, 70. You're getting 63, so you're actually going to be dealing 78 rather than 65 damage. That's big. All right, so she will have a more pronounced window of power right there in the early game, but some of the scalings can go down, and of course she lost at the power here. Rell has been the #1 champion in pro because she's flexible. You can play her in multiple lanes. So she was due for a nerf. Base armor decreased, passive armor and magic resist steel are being decreased, right? So this was in the passive. A lot of people kind of forgot about this because they moved it out of the queue, but it's still been there. She's been stealing these stats left and right. This has made her #1 in the tank versus tank environment. And then she just was also very good against enchanters, so that made her too good. So they're taking this away. Base armor is going down by 3 noticeably. This is 10 lower than Alistar now, significant change. So you may be able to take Alistar into Rell, counter engage, let her jump on you, headbutt her to your turret, stomp, boom, and that's your counter engage. Minimum armor and resistance, these are changing slightly. The important thing to know is that this will affect her jungling a little bit. It'll affect her duels in those tanks a little bit. It's going to bring her power down a little bit. This will put her back into line. She's still very strong. The kit's great. Ever since they changed the Q, right? Q flash, all these abilities, which items you can do. Make sure you bring her into practice tool. Press EW, WE, EQ, E flash Q, right? EQ flash. All of these different abilities can go and partner up together. Make sure that you learn these combos. Rengar has also been overperforming, which is kind of crazy to think. Almost being considered for pro play, which is something that just doesn't really happen with Rengar. Health regen per 5 seconds is going down by 1. This is like nothing. This doesn't matter at all. It will hit top lane a little bit, and the critical strike damage conversion is going down by 20. This is a big change. One of the champions that was most affected by the changes on Essence Reaver was Rengar, and this is why they're going and they're making another nerf here. They're like, we need to be down another peg, so 20 down. I would not recommend picking up Rengar at this point. Shaco, QAD scaling increased, backstab damage increased, and bug fixes. Shaco has a lot of bugs. This is potentially a big deal. We've talked about laning Shaco a little bit, and the fact that Static Shiv is perhaps best on Shaco and Akali, even better than LeBlanc, because they use AD scaling and they actually attack more, right? They use more attacks in their combos. Let's hear what they've got to say. Full AD Assassin Shaco builds have been struggling to finish off kills after the adjustment we made to Duskblade and Infinity Edge, specifically that you can't pair them and you can't do a build that builds into them with Collector anymore. We're looking to give back a little of his lost power with these changes, ensuring that his primary AD Assassin build remains well supported. Remember that his AP build is probably, I see that one more often. I won't say it's more popular, but it definitely scales better. The AD one's better early. Let's see what they say about it. Bonus physical damage, all right. The raw numbers staying the same, but you're gaining 10% on your bonus AD. This will also bonus affect if you're going Static Shiv into an AP build. This will affect that, right? The fact that you're getting an extra scale from the Static Shiv itself. Backstab bonus critical damage is being upped by 15%. This is a big deal. All right, this is really impacting the critical hits. Hallucinate, Prowler's Claw, Bug Fix passive will now properly be applied to the Shaco clone. You basically get this twice, and if you're really apt, you can use one Prowler's Claw from the clone, and then you use your own, and you can basically sit someone in place for 2 whole seconds, which is more than enough time to get your traps down. So the combo here, they're trying to hit you. Let's say they're a Rengar and they dive on you. And right before they hit you, you press R, you hold Alt, and you right click to make sure that your clone is going to come out and hit them. Your Prowler Claw will slow. You put your trap down, you use your own character, you hit them again, they're slowed again, and there they are stuck on the trap on top of everything else that you're going to do to them. Not so fast a dragon. Dragon boxes will no longer instantly die to the Hextech Dragon Lightning AoE. That's good. And zip zap no more. Zeri Q bullets will now deal the correct amount of damage. All right, so presumably this means that they'll actually survive. Shyvana, Q AD scaling increased. Attack speed increase added. Cooldown increased. E now additionally scales with bonus AD. Done giving up with dreams that they'll actually give us the rework that they promised for Shyvana. They said they were going to do it. It won the vote, and they just brushed it under the rug, and they changed the post that was asking for it, or saying that she had won. So that's just not going to happen anymore. We're going to get Shyvana in her present form forever, apparently. Q bonus damage, 25% AP, but also gaining. Boom! Look at that, scaling AD, and this is based on your build, right? Or just not your build, not your scaling. Just your rank, you're leveling up. This is your base AD, so this is going to be a big change for the total amount of damage on Twin Bite. Plus you're getting this effect. Twice attack speed increase. Shyvana's next 2 attacks have 40 to 55. This is just new. The cooldown's going slightly up to compensate. So, this means, all right, this means that presumably, because it used to be attack Q for double bite, right? So it was attack once and then bite bite. They're making it so that the next 2 attacks, which is the bite, have increased attack speed. It shouldn't have any effect for how quickly the bite happens, but because you have increased attack speed, your next attack will not be slowed. So basically, when you used to have to go attack Q, an attack Q would give you basically 3 attacks in a small window, but then you'd have to wait for that last one. And now, because it's got an extra increased attack speed, you shouldn't have to wait. So now basically you're going to get 4 attacks off in the time of 2. You used to be able to have to wait for that like extra full cooldown to get that 3rd attack or the 4th attack in. Flame Breath, bonus magic damage on hit versus marked targets. All right. 3% is now changing to also have 1% per 100 bonus AD. All right, so this time it's bonus AD. This is for her Titanic Hydra type builds. She still gains a tremendous amount of health, so you want to get these health stacking, health scaling items like Titanic Hydra. And basically, since you're going to have all that extra AD, that'll turn into about 1 or 2% extra damage in your build. If you're going Iceborne Gauntlet, you're not going to get anything from that. But if you have like the Sterix Gauge and the Titanic, you're going to be able to deal an extra 1%. This is fairly I'll just call it meaningless. Big change to Volibear, and if you haven't seen Freak's video on the patch notes, it's about 2 hours long. You have to be very patient to go through it, but he talks about all of this and how AP Volibear is getting a double dip from these patches. I think Volibear is just fine right now. Could just be the way that I play it. But we're going to look at these buffs. They're kind of intense, all right? 11 to 60 with 40% AP is now getting a 58% AP scaling on the passive. This is the lightning. This will affect your ability to clear waves. Thundering Smash, quality of life. Removed a hitch in Volibear's auto attacks after stunning at high attack speeds. I used to run into this all the time, and I always thought it was user error. So now I'm happy to see that this was a bug. Getting rid of it is going to be super meaningful, because in these fights, I was like, wait, why am I canceling my animation? Wait, I didn't actually cast my E because it put me in this freeze frame. That's going to be gone. So if that's truly gone, this is a huge power spike to endgame Volibear for Nashor's Tooth builds. Not going to be important for Iceborne Gauntlet. It should impact Trinity Force if you're going Trinity Force into something like Wit's End or Blade of the Rune King, which is viable. Normally he's better off to build as a tank, but if you were going Trinity Force at the very end of your build, you will feel this as well. This is a huge change because the champion just didn't work in fights. You'd walk in, you'd auto Q, throw up your E, and you're like, oh, wait, where's the... And then you're inputting other commands, and you're like, wait, where's my E? My E never cast. That's a big deal that was happening. So if that is truly happening, then this is a huge buff. Frenzied Maul is now giving you a larger chunk of your percent missing health, okay? So this is very good for laning phase in particular, not very good for late game team fights. There's just not enough time to hit the bit target more. But in your laning phase, if you're maxing W, which is not something you do in the AP build, this number will go up. It is going up, so by the end of the game, level 14, 15, 17, 18, you are getting a little bit better. It is percent of missing health, so you're getting these off. That's usually when you're getting that second Frenzied Maul off in the fight, so find that target, try to stick to them. It's one of the reasons why Iceborne Gauntlet is so good. It lets you stick and make sure you can get more Frenzied Maul off. And that will be meaningful. So all of the builds getting impacted for Volibear. I think Volibear is going to be a huge problem. I don't know if it's pro ready. I think it's pretty close. And largely that might come down to metas and like which champions are available. But for example, I'm very happy to take Volibear into any tank in the top lane. I'm happy to take it into most of the fighters in the top lane now too. And basically, unless we get metagames with very kitey AD carries like Vayne, for example, who they've been trying to buff. If there's Vayne, Volibear won't show up, but if champions like Vayne are gone, then Volibear can succeed. Xerath, rarely seen. Base mana going down by 60, but check out these changes. The cooldown on the passive going up by 4, but Mana Surge's cooldown is now reduced by 2 seconds upon killing a unit. Alright, so this is a big buff for mid lane mage. Hitting turrets will also now proc the Mana Surge. So again, big change for mid. Rite of the Arcane. Number of casts. You now get 4. Okay, 4, 5, and 6 instead of 3, 4, and 5. The magic damage is going down slightly and the AP ratio is going down slightly. But if you're able to hit all of your targets, this is good. This should allow for some fantasies of Xerath, like I'm shooting people to death with death lasers. But realistically, this means that you're actually stationary for an extra half second in fights, which is a big problem at high levels of play. Successive snipes. If a champion is hit with a bolt, successive bolts will deal an additional 20, 25, and 30. So you see that they get that number back and then some. This applies to any number of champions hit with a bolt. So whether or not you hit 1 or 5, you will only receive up to 1 stack. And that's fine. They're basically giving you back the bonus. So there are more fantasies of endgame Xerath being able to rip through these fights. Having access to 6 of these at the endgame is potentially meaningful when you're talking about pit fights. But you're going to have to be very careful because you are stationary for another quarter second to half second in fights. And that will impact your survivability. You do need to position accordingly. Zyra, one of our favorites, several quality of life updates. So we're going to read this out. Zyra remains a popular and very deep champion with her roots sunken into her devoted fan base. So while she may not be the perfect queen of plants, we believe she's clearly a character players love as she is. With these changes, we're looking to help polish her up and ensure that playing her is enjoyable and that her gameplay doesn't feel like it's fighting against you as it does sometimes. These changes should make her feel more responsive and function more in line. We're also making her jungle mod make sense as an additional change. We don't expect to be her primary or even secondary role, but we want to make sure it's at least a little bit viable for the players who are excited to play her there. We have seen some Zyras pop up, okay, so we're excited to see this. Meanwhile, we also want to retain some parity for ranged AoE users who are intentionally damaging down these units with auto attacks. Garden of Thorns. Plant damage from AoE spells, all right, from 4 to 3. Plant damage from ranged auto attacks is going from 4 to 5. All right, so now when you're auto attacking, you're more likely to be able to kill these plants right away. Less likely to be able to cast spells to kill the plants. Plant damage to monsters. 150% damage to non-epic monsters is changing to 40 to 100. This is a very big change early. Bonus magic damage to all monsters. Scales with champion levels. She was already capable of soloing Baron. So this bonus in magic damage, keep in mind that you're going to have 3 or 4 plants down on these fights when you pop up. This is going to scale very, very quickly. They're all hitting for that extra amount. All of the spell pen is going to affect. You're also going to get the Liandries going on all of them. So the damage is going to be pretty intense. Seeds on first rank up. You get 2 immediately. This is a huge quality of life change and a huge deal for her laning phase. I cannot express this enough because normally you were handcuffed by where your seeds showed up. And sometimes you'd have to level your W as you hit 2 to cast a spell, put 2 seeds out, and just get those procs right away as they were. Or get a seed out, I should say. Now you can immediately put 2 seeds out. So that's a huge chunk of damage coming out. It's also very important if you're going for your level 1. Let's say you're taking blue buff. 4 seeds show up around you. You kill the blue buff. You smite it. Now you rank up your W, and immediately you'll have 2 seeds. So you're going to be able to go through. So actually, kind of looking like she's going to have an insane clear. I definitely want to test this out. Grasping Roots, flash interaction. E no longer locks Zyra out of using her flash during the cast time. Okay, does that mean that we get access to E flash now? Yes, it does. All right. So she was a champion that could not E flash. Now we can? No, it's still not going to have it. It's still going to be an instant. We're going to have to test this one out. Come back, and we'll check it out. Strangle Thorns. Damage application cadence is happening 16 times a second, just like Lissandra. Zyra will walk to the position at which her R was cast. Now she will immediately cast her R at its maximum range. That's a casting logic thing. This is basically where if you aimed a little bit further in a fight, you'd actually start walking into the fight and you'd probably die. So instead now when you cast at max range, it'll just cast and you'll get the best that you can get out of it. That is a huge quality of life increase, especially for people who are just picking her up. Very interesting to see where Zyra's going to land and whether or not she can get played in the jungle. So we will make a video on her. We will certainly play her today, right after we record this. So if you're around 2 o'clock, check out Giga Gaming Academy on YouTube, Twitch, on Kick, all of the above, Twitter as well, and Facebook. Items. Axiomark. Ultimate cooldown refunded went from 20 to 5 plus 40% of your total lethality. This will be a buff at Mythic plus Axiom. Okay, so basically if you buy this item second, it's a buff. If you buy it first, it's a slight nerf. All right, so make sure that you're not getting Axiomark first. You want to get it second. In most cases, I don't even think that Nocturne really wants Axiomark first, because when you cast it and you're Axiomark and you're not Duskblade, for example, or Eclipse, you're just not getting that kill. And so if you don't get the kill, you're not getting the cooldown anyways. So highly recommend that Axiomark comes second in your builds if you're a champion like Nocturne. Gale Force cooldown, it's still the primary. They're reducing it or making it 30 seconds longer. This is another attempt to make Infinity Edge good. If this doesn't make Infinity Edge playable, they're just going to scrap it, honestly. They're going to undo the whole system. They're going to take it away as a mythic. It probably shouldn't be a mythic. Sorry, I take that back. It should be a mythic, but they should stop pushing the narrative that mythics should come early in your build. Mythics only really take over as valuable items by third build, by third item. Once you have 2 extra passives to add to it, that's when you tend to get the extra value from it. A lot of mythic items, unless they have an active you care about, are not actually that important. And Infinity Edge doesn't have an active, so the numbers just don't align. Right now, they're giving you the extra crit strike damage right away. They're taking away 5 damage. I don't think they had to take away the 5 damage, frankly. This is still going to be a buff. They want the auto attack crits to stand out, as they say right here, which should safely happen. I don't know. Like the world where AD carries buy Infinity Edge, there's only 2 champions that really want it early, like Caitlyn and Jhin. Because they are getting guaranteed Infinity Edge procs. They're getting guaranteed crits. Everybody else is waiting for that 1 in 5 chance. That's just not really happening that often enough to justify this compared to other items which have better effects. So Infinity Edge and all of its users, and basically marksmen, are still just going to be down here compared to the Seraphians of the world. Prowler's Claw. After its rework, Prowler's Claw is still a bit weak compared to the premium damage carry item. Wow. I think it's mostly just because it's been misused. A lot of people haven't like thought about all the cases you can use it for, when to buy it, when to put it into your builds. It's getting 3 extra lethality, which makes this a very aggressive early purchase to get, especially as aforementioned on Shaco, where you can Q onto someone and attack them, slow them by 1%, get the trap on them, and now you can actually dodge with your ultimate. You get 2 Prowler's Claw procs off of it, which is insane. Randuin's Omen has been an unpopular item. Critical strike damage reduction. This is great. They absolutely needed to put this. They don't really need the slow activation to be on it. They just need to make this the anti-crit item. That if the enemy team has Yone, Yasuo, Tristana, and Callista, then you're like, I've got an item for that. So going up by 5%. They're probably worried about this being too good in an environment, but since we've been seeing lots of Tristana mid, lots of Yone as a scaling option, especially in top lane, this is going to start mattering. All right, Randuin's Omen to start negating these kindred Tristana type complements, Yone, Yasuo complements to compositions that already had 1 or 2 AD carries in them. If there's 3, 100% you're buying it. If there's 2, it might be right, especially if they're the ones who are fed. Spear of Shojin should be way more exciting than it is. You heard it here first. Don't tell your friends. Keep it to yourself. But if you play Kled, Spear of Shojin cools down your W, which is supposed to gate you as far as getting back up onto Skarl. It brings the cooldown down to 3 seconds. So if you play Kled, not only does it give you the passive of being low health, so you just start moving really fast, which is very important for Kled when he dismounts, but also you will just always have access to your W, which will give you more remounts because your attack speed's there. It's also an intense damage amplification. So heard it here first. Play Spear of Shojin on Kled. It's getting buffed. 100 gold less and 50 health more. They did this in part. They knew they were dropping Jax, and they knew that Jax was the most prominent Spear of Shojin user in the game. So these kind of went hand in hand. They said, okay, we can buff Spear since we're nerfing Jax, but check this out on champions like Jarvan, on Kled, where you're not CCing the opponent, you're just casting a spell that also has a CC component, if that makes sense. It's very, very good in those spots. So definitely best on Kled, very good on the other one I just my goodness. I've lost myself. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Jax or Hecarim, it's going down. It's getting better, but those champions both got nerfed. But it is going to be a much, much, much better. Jarvan being the other one. Very good. Try it out on both those champions. Super exciting. Spirit Visage. Freak wants to make this the item that you want when you have healing in your kit. The problem is on giving move speed, which is the most impactful ability in the game, and the fact that Abyssal Mask is overtuned means that you should basically never really buy Spirit Visage. This extra 10 MR is not going to make a change. If you want to survive, Spirit Visage is rarely better than Force of Nature. Some cases like Nasus, where you're actually making use of the ability haste really well as well, will matter. So it will be good on Nasus himself, but there's still other options. You don't need to rush it. It's good into those AP matchups, into the top lane, for example, Teemo. If you're playing midi or low, you might get countered with Teemo a lot. You just kill him at level 6. You can rush components of Spirit Visage. You don't even need aggressive items. You just chase down Teemo at level 6. Nasus can be very strong in those ways. Static Shiv. 5% extra attack speed. The electroshock damage is changing. Basically, they're still not happy with how much it's one-shotting minion waves. So they're putting some math in. Let's read it right here. The minion damage has been tuned to nearly kill caster minions, but not quite do it unless you're at the cutting edge of experience gain. All right, so basically read solo laner. If you're a mid or a top and doing well, then you continue to one-shot waves. And what that means is that by doing well, you continue to do well because you can one-shot minion waves, and then you can go to other things on the map. Unfortunately, this very specific goal has meant it's easy to eclipse that mark with Minion Dematerializer, and this is something that we spoke very vocally about. You just use this once on each type or twice on the casters that you have it all game. Additionally, the item can stall games with its late game minion damage requiring Baron buff to push through. Outside of those worries, the item is pretty well balanced, so with a nerf to its wave clear comes a compensation to its base stats. Alright, so there's a little bit of feels right there. Steric's Gauge is meant to be the primary I'm a fighter that goes into a big dogpile fight. Hello, my name is Darius item in the game. And even Darius's haven't liked it ever since the change back when. So they're actually, for same as Spear of Shojin, getting 100 less gold and 50 more health. You should absolutely be buying this item on champions like Darius if you're going to be in the middle of the fight. Reed also Jarvan, so totally doesn't mind this. So you can go something like Gore Drinker, Spear of Shojin, Steric's Gauge, and just be this big, like, bruisey health tank that can build Titanic later. Very difficult to kill. You've got the Omnivamp, you've got the damage, you've got ways to stay alive. I think these kind of bruiser endgames are going to start looking really, really nice. Trinity Force got massive buffs in mid-season and finally has a home in several fighters' inventories. It took people a long time to realize that. If you look at win rates, Triforce is basically 6 to 8% points higher than Sunder across the board. So a lot of people are still building Sunder. Trinity Force just performs better. It feels really nice when you're in this like trade 1-for-1 pattern to have Sunder, but you just don't realize how much that extra move speed, that haste, really gives to you over the course of the game. Several marksmen have even found Trinity Force's bundle of stats to make a lot of sense as well. After all, with short cooldowns and easy ways to an auto attack is going to use Spellblade well, while the amping % AD passive from threefold strikes also rewards long duration auto attack patterns. We're pretty happy with its suite of users and think they all make sense. With that said, we want to make sure that balancing the item for marksmen still allows fighters to deal tons of damage. This is a shout out to Season 1. Attack speed going down by 2 to the number that it should have been at all points. Attack damage per stack is now 4 to 3 plus 3. Okay, great. This is good. They make it Trinity. This is also flavorful. This is just a great maximum threefold stacks is now 3 instead of 5. Now I'm glad that they did this because this item was about the 3s. I like that they're going back to the memes. Like, this game gained popularity with this kind of stuff. Overall, no longer 5 stacks of 4, which was 20%. Now you can get 3 stacks of 6, which is 18, right? So it's going to be less. I actually just am realizing now that they only wanted to write 3 plus 3 so that it could be part of the patch notes as 3s. But it's really just 6%. So your Ezreals of the world, your Dravens of the world, who are continuing medium-long patterns of auto attacks, you're going to get a slight amount of attack damage nerf from this, but your initial increase off of 1 hit is still going to be fine. Summoner spells. Ghost. Ghost has been the best option for a long time, so let's talk about this. Ghost is catching on as an incredibly strong summoner spell and is rapidly becoming the go-to pick for bot laners, as it should have been for years and years, but it takes a long time for trickle down to happen. We're happy that players have identified another strong tool to use, but Ghost is just a bit overtuned right now. Sorry, guys. we had it while it was good. Duration is going up by 5 seconds, but the duration no longer is increased by getting takedowns. Okay, this was huge for your marksman, because in those long team fights that would last 25 seconds, you were just getting stack upon stack upon stack. Not to mention that you have celerity users, you have the Zeris of the world, all this movement speed flying around the fights. You are getting a little bit kind of ridiculous on how long it was giving the bonus. So instead, we're getting it for 15. This is much better for engages. This means that we might start considering it out of the jungle, because now you can make it from first known information where they see you into the map and still have ghost duration for your cooldowns. 10 seconds was kind of not quite enough to do that. If you were running past a ward, they knew you were there, you turned on Ghost. By the time you're actually fighting them, then Ghost was wearing off. You're actually going to have that window now. So this is kind of a buff to a lot of different champions, especially your top lane bruisers that are going to look to extend that original fight. So this is really, really massive for them. We're going to see a lot of teleport Ghost from top laners now instead of teleport flash. And the duration no longer goes up. Jungle buff adjustments. All right, basically the red buff is still too strong. They're making it a little bit worse early, all right, which is a big change. They're also changing it for the range. Range is staying the same, but the melee slow at levels 1, 6, 11, 16. You're now getting the threshold that used to be at 6, 11, 16 is happening at 1, 6. Sorry. It was 1, 6, 11. Now you're getting those at 6, 11, 16. So a significant change in the slow in early fights means that you're going to get less of these automatic wins in the jungle just by having red buff. If you're an experienced jungler, you know that the guy that has red buff wins the fight. That's just kind of how it works. There's certainly some deviations based on matchup, but if you have red buff and they don't, even if they have blue, you have red, you win. All right, so they're trying to take that away a little bit. The burn true damage going down by 3 later, but you're not, check this out, sorry. 10 to 78 linear based scaling is now becoming 10 to 75, remains at 10 until level 5, and then goes up linearly. All right, so you used to get 10, 13, 16, 19, right? It would work its way up. Now you're going 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So if you get in a fight, at the most common time for junglers to fight is level 3 and level 4. Now red buff only deals 10 damage per tick rather than 19. So that's going to add up to potentially 60 damage over the course of one of those fights. So definitely a meaningful change. It's not nearly as strong in these early fights. We'll see if that's enough to change it. I suspect that red buff is still going to be paramount. If you have red, you're still very likely to win. The fact that you still have the healing and the slow attached to it, even though they're mitigated, should be enough to win those fights if it's even close to 50-50. But you no longer are you going to see champions like Kha'Zix beating a Trundle just because they had red buff and Trundle didn't. Okay, you're the champion who's supposed to win, even without red buff, will win here. Ability haste went from 10 to 5, 10, 15, 20. So again, less of a spike early. They're taking a ton of power away from junglers with these two changes. Some ARAM adjustments. Themed Clash is coming. Hopefully it's going to be intact and it'll work. Hopefully with prizes and everything. Mythic shop rotations coming in. We're excited for this. Arena, augment, data policy, all these things. Check for your champions with the quality of life changes. There's a lot of champions, you know what your main is, you know what issues they have. Come check it out to find it. Upcoming skins and chromas, I know we're all excited about those. And like we said, we promised that we would look at Naafiri. Where'd she go? There it is. The rundown, bio, trailer, and insights are all right here. So here's the scoop. Her kit is unexciting. It's not this like paramount kit. I expect that she will end up moving roles. I think that they want her to be in specific roles. I don't think she's really fit for that. She looks like she's going to be an okay jungler, but at what cost? Like, she doesn't have the early power that Elise has, and yet she functions kind of similarly with getting extra spiderlings, getting extra wolf pack. The kit's not really exciting. It doesn't feel like it's going to dazzle. So values are going to have to be high. And this is going to be one of those champions where if the values are that high, you're just going to stick her into solo lanes, pick fights with good values, and you're just going to win. They're probably not going to let that happen. They might do it early, so you want to get an idea. Starting on July 20th when they actually release the champion, you're going to want to pick her up and test those limits early. Let me know in the comments below if you find fights like, hey, like here's an insight from this matchup. Love to hear it. I love to hear that sort of stuff on the channel. But apart from that, she's going to have to stay at that like slightly overtuned place. And they might just do it, frankly, because she's been maybe the most hyped I've seen people about champions in a long time. They're really excited about the story, the kit, Darkin, everything about it. So because she's that popular, she may stay dialed up for a bit. And they may make sure that those numbers are up there. But ultimately, as if it comes down to being a one trick, I don't think that she's destined to be good for substantial long-term growth. But we'll see when we get her out. Make sure that you stay tuned. We'll be checking it out on Friday for sure. Chances are she releases on time on Thursday, but Friday for sure we'll be playing Naafiri as much as possible. And that's going to be it. Thanks for checking it out. I appreciate everybody who made it this far. If you made it this far, make sure to check out gigagamingacademy.com/about. You can sign up for coaching there. Use the code GIGAGAMER to get special deals on your next practice session, whether or not it's going to be with a group, with a team, if it's just you, if you're doing one-on-one or you're doing a package, or just one day, it's all good. All right, so I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.